Hi everybody, it's Sarah. Thank you guys so much for joining me for the Painting of the Month Club. This month we are going to be doing a painting, you can see it behind me, of a lake scene with a dock with some mountains in the background, very serene and very summery. So the painting is going to be using our primary colors. You should have your pack of paintbrushes. Go ahead and take those out. Get yourself a cup of water. Get all of your materials out and ready to go. Now at any point, if you feel like you need to pause the video, you're welcome to pause it and you can watch it over and over again. You can watch this as many times as you need to. So pause the video as you need to go. I will probably be working kind of quickly, especially because we will be blending a lot, and blending, you need the paint to be wet on the surface to be able to blend the other colors in. So just a heads up on that. Now the paintbrushes that you're going to need, now I wet mine first, you might want to do that as well, helps prevent all the paint from soaking in. So the paintbrushes you're going to need are your big flat brush, that's going to be for our background and filling in large areas quickly. This is our angled brush or our chisel brush, it's the one with the slanted top. This one is good for blending. It is a blending brush, so you might find that you want to try it out. You go right ahead and do that. Now, I will say that the bigger your brush, the less strokes you're going to see. So try to use a bigger brush if possible. I know it might be a little bit hard for some spots, so just use a bigger brush whenever you can, okay? Angled brush. And then we have our filbert, that's this one with the rounded top. This one's good for making rounded corners, petals, leaves, flowers, and you can just use it to fill things in. It's also a stippling brush, so stippling, we'll need to use that at the end. Our last brush is our detail brush. This is going to be what we use for our fine lines. So things like our lines in between here, all of these poles, even outlining our mountain shapes and our rocks and pebbles at the bottom. Now, this painting, again, is going to use our primary colors plus our black and white. I have a piece of cardboard that I'm recycling here tonight for my painting. You have a paper plate in your package that you can use as a palette. So I have mine arranged with my primaries, yellow, red, blue, so that I can mix them together. So red and yellow makes orange, red and blue makes purple. I'm not going to need green, so I don't need to put my blue next to my yellow, okay? Then I have my black and my white. I tend to put my white in the middle so I can pull it into each section. Now I'm going to need the most white tonight. I need a pretty decent amount of black too, but mostly white, and then just a little bit of each of these other colors, okay? Now we're going to mix as we go along. You can see I already have some mixed on here, but I'm going to need more as I go because it's pretty warm out, and whenever it's hot out, it does tend to make your paint dry faster. So let's go ahead and take our big flat brush and our white paint. Now I'm going to coat my entire canvas with white, but I'm going to start with just half of it for right now, because we are going to be doing some wet on wet. So that means putting wet paint right on top of other wet paint that's already on the canvas. So I'm going to go about halfway down. Make sure you do your edges, go around your sides, around the top, and go all the way down to the halfway point. You might want to add a little water just to smooth things out. Make sure it's nice and evenly coated, because we want to have our blue mix into this. We don't want to have dry sections where it won't blend. So I'm going to rinse my brush next. You can kind of see my white paint. It's a little bit different there. So go ahead and rinse out your brush. And go ahead and take a little bit of your blue, coat both sides of your bristles, okay? And start at the top. I'm going to add a little more than that. Go up over the top. Again, anytime you touch the edge of the painting, wrap it around the sides. And we're going to blend this down by letting the paint run off of our bristles. We want to stop so that it's like a third of the way down. So think about it in thirds. If you go a little farther, that's okay. If you get a weird blue blob in the middle, blend it out by going back and forth, nice long brush strokes over it. So then we're going to flip our canvas and do this the same way on the other side. Rinse your brush in between. You might find that you'll need to stop and get new water every once in a while. Please go ahead and do that. Especially with your background, you'll probably go through more water changes than the other areas because you have so much paint on your brush compared to as we go. We'll have less and less paint on our brush as we do the detail sections. So we're coating it in white again. Again, make sure we wrap it around the side. Take it all the way down to that other white section. Maybe add a little water just to get it to smooth out. My studio here is pretty warm right now, so my paint is drying very quickly. You know, that's okay sometimes, but right now I want it to be a little slower. I'm going to turn this off, this fan off, so that it's not speeding up my drying. And remember, take it all the way down to the other white section. Oh, I'm already splashing on my other canvas. You can see, you can take this off once the bottom layer is cured. We're just going to wipe that. Okay. So when you have that whole area coated with a nice even coat of white, do the same thing, your blue, fading it from the top down, leaving a white section in the middle, about a third of the way. But if it goes a little farther, again, it's not a problem. So the colorful sections are all in the background on this painting. Once we get to the foreground, it's all going to be black and white. Just something to keep in mind. And fade it down. So if you find that yours is really streaky like mine, rinse your brush, wipe it off, start over, going from the white section up, taking it all the way off the side of the canvas. You'll be able to see where your brush strokes start and stop. So we want to make sure we end off the page. And just fix any areas up that you might want fixed. I'm going to run and grab a new cup of water and I'll be right back. All right, so we can see in our original painting we have pink and we have yellow, and when it overlaps it makes orange. So let's go ahead and make some pink. Pink is just going to be red and white, and to mix my colors I'm using my Filbert brush. Again, that's the one with the rounded top. And so a little bit of red, more white. We don't need a ton of pink, so don't go crazy using all your red up, because you might want to use it to do something else, another painting or something, because you should have more than enough paint in your containers. So just a little bit of pink. And then I'll go back to my big flat brush and starting in the center, I'm going to leave a little white spot right in between. Okay? Leaving a little white spot in between. So while that's wet though, I want to blend it up. So I'm going to rinse off my brush. So originally I put those lines in, leaving a little white line in between, and then taking a little water. Be careful with the water though, because you don't want drips, and blend it up into your blue. Softening that where it meets that white line. Okay, and do the same thing at the bottom. So rinse your brush and soften that edge. Bring that blue, blend it down into our, or bring that pink, blend it down into the blue. If you need a little extra pink because maybe you blended it too much, just go ahead and add that back in there. Maybe you want to have some other random streaks in your sky. You can add other colors. You don't have to stick with exactly what I have. I want to see you guys be a little creative too. Alright, so our pink is blended up and down. And then we'll rinse our brush. So again, this part goes kind of quickly because our paint has to be wet whenever we're blending it on the canvas. I'm going to take a little bit of my yellow, and I'm actually going to add some water right into my yellow on my palette. So I'm adding with my big brush, just adding some water, thinning it out right there. Okay, now right along the edge of my pink, I'm going to add some streaks of yellow, and I'm going to overlap that down into my blue. Some streaks of yellow right in that pink. It's going to make orange where it meets, and a little bit down into the blue. Do that on the other side as well. So overlap it into the pink area and pull it up into your blue. And I don't have a whole bunch. You just want to start with a little bit on your paintbrush, and you can always add more layering to it as you go. Blend it down into that pink a little bit and up into the blue. All right. When you get it the way you like it, you can stop with that. Now, whenever I kind of space these out about halfway, it doesn't have to be perfect. This area is going to be covered up with our mountain range, and so if it's not quite exactly where you want it, that's okay. If it's higher than you want it, make that be the top. That way, whenever you go to put your mountains on, you can cover it up, okay? And bring it down to the point where you want it. Now, we can eyeball it, or we can try to measure it with our fingers. So I'm going to say, oh, let's see. I'm going to point here. All right, so measure with your fingers. Keep your fingers still as you move them. I'm going to say right around there. So I need to come down just a little bit. And I'm going to take my detail brush. That is your little tiny brush. Now there's a trick to doing this, using this brush. Do not stick it in straight up and down. It's going to spread your bristles apart and make a big blob at the tip of your paintbrush. No matter what, and then it's going to just keep shoving paint up towards the furrow, which is this little shiny part. And so it's just going to get all clogged up. Let's try to keep it towards the tip of the brush. So add a little water to your paint. We need white with our detail brush. I'm going to just mix it in right here, and then kind of on an angle, twirl it, pull it out, and that'll keep it a nice point. Now we're going to turn our canvas, and this helps us get a nice straightish edge. You can hook your pinky around the side and go down. Now my canvas isn't very dry right now, so I'm going to just rub my finger right through paint if I do that. But I do find that whenever you're going down, gravity's working with you, and it helps you get a little bit of a straighter line. If you want, you can try to hook your pinky and just slide your hand down, keeping your hand in the same position, but pulling it straight down. That'll help you get a straight line as well. I'm going to just eyeball it and make a straight line as much as possible with white and my detail brush. Now the trick to getting a thin line with this brush, this part just doesn't really have to be thin because we're going to blend it down anyways, but the trick to having a thin line with your detail brush is just using the tip. So A, putting it in on an angle, twirling it as you pull it out so it has a fine tip, and then only using the tip of the brush. If you have to just do a little bit at a time, dip again, do a little bit at a time, instead of trying to do an entire painting with one brush load, okay? So I'm going to turn my canvas back the way it was. And with my angled brush, I'm just going to soften up that white line so it's not like so linear. It's just kind of a soft area right there. Now this is my original line, and I'm going to cover that with my mountain range. So let's go ahead and mix our colors for our mountain range. When I mix my colors, I tend to stick with my angled brush or my filbert, but you can use any brush really. If you have a palette knife, that's great, that's perfect. Palette knives are great for mixing. Okay, so I'm going to use my filbert to mix. We need a dark gray, a light gray, and black. And those are going to be the three shades for our mountains. If you look closely, you can see in the background, there's a light gray mountain, dark gray, and then black. All right, so we can do that while the paint is wet. So don't stress about having a dry canvas for this part. I need to make a little bit more of each of these before we go on. So go ahead and mix up your dark gray, your light gray, and then make sure you have enough black. The majority that you're going to need is going to be your black. It's going to fill in the biggest section. Just a heads up. We want to have a lot of contrast between our grays though, so just make sure they're not super close together. Add more black. Don't be afraid to have contrast. Go dark. It's okay. Don't be afraid of the dark, what they say. I'm just mixing up my gray here so you can see how much I have. I need a little more black before we go on. So you have these nice little pots that you can store your paints in. So if you have extra left over, you can just keep it in there. It'll keep for a while actually. And maybe use it for something that you want to make that's your own idea. Be creative. See what you come up with. Okay, so to do the next part, we actually need our detail brush. We're going to be drawing in the mountain range. We're going to draw 3 mountain ranges. It's going to be the light one first, then our middle shade of gray, and then our black range. After we draw all 3 mountain ranges in, then we're going to fill them in. So where they overlap, you do the darker of the shades that overlaps. I'll show you what I mean here in a second. So let's start with our lightest color. Again, dip in your water, kind of dab it off the side of there so that it's not dripping. Get a little bit of that light gray. Zip it in on the angle and then twirl it as you pull it out. Now, remember, this is our line. I'm going to come up. See how far back I'm holding my brush? That's going to give me less control. We want less control whenever we want to have things that look more natural, like a mountain shape. So hold it back kind of far. It might kind of jerk and jump, and that's okay. That's going to make it look more realistic than if you hold it really close down here and have a whole lot of control and make them very sharp and, you know, not like you would see necessarily. If your paint is kind of dry like mine, add a little water to it. Mine is drying really fast, from being in the warm air. Okay, so once you have that first mountain line in, you like it, maybe you don't like it, you can change it up, add things. And then we're going to go on to our middle gray, overlapping it, making it a little bit different mountain range, a little more gradual. Now my dip in my mountain range, it is off center. I don't want it to be right in the middle of my canvas. Okay, and then I'm going to rinse my brush again and go to my black. And my black will be my last mountain range, and then I'll go ahead and color them in. Now let's go ahead and do the black. Again, you don't want them to be exactly lined up. You want them to kind of go in and out so you can see bumps of one behind the other one. And everybody's is going to be slightly different. Add a little bump here, nice gradual slope. And then start back up the hill. And then off the page. Don't forget, go wrap around the side of the canvas. Now I'm going to rinse my brush again because I'm going to use my filbert actually to fill them. So go ahead and take your filbert. You always want to use the biggest brush that you can so you have less streaking and less brush strokes visible. Unless your point is to have extra texture, then go with your brush strokes. That's great too. So let's start with our lightest color because we're doing our farthest away mountain and things appear lighter in the distance. So filbert with our light gray. I only want to fill in the sections that are not overlapped with a different color. So like this little bump coming up here. This little bump coming up here. This little bump over here. You can change things as you go along too. It doesn't have to be finalized, just yet. All right, and then, so that's all I can really see on that mountain range that's not overlapped. So then I'll go to my dark gray and only fill in the things that are not overlapped with my black line. And again, wrap it around the side of your canvas. Rinse your brush and then go ahead and do your last mountain range, which would be the black ones. Take it all the way down to that white line that you painted in. In fact, you might want to do your black line right above that white line so you know where to stop. Make sure you wrap it around the edges again. On this one, you're going to have a lot more space to fill in than the others. So if you want to switch up to a bigger brush, maybe your angled brush, that'll make it look a little smoother for you. If you're comfortable with this one, then you go ahead and just stick with your filbert. It's already starting to come together, right? You can see our mountain ranges, our water, our sky. Okay, I'm going to stop with that there. Now, the next part seems a little bit odd, but we are going to shade our corners. If you want to skip any of the steps, you're welcome to do it however you want to at home. Now, I take my angled brush with a little bit of black and add some water to it. So I'm thinning out my paint with some water. So it's real watery. Okay. I'm going to put this up on the edge here so you guys can see a little better. Right in the corner, I'm going to add some very watery black. Curve it towards the center so it's like out of focus photo kind of thing. And then we're going to blend it up. I'm using my angled brush for this whole part. So put it on in the corner. Blend it up. Now if it's too much, take a little, rinse your brush and take a little water and go back towards the corner to blend it in a little more or to take it off. So let's go ahead and do this other side before it dries. It's kind of arched, so just something to keep in mind. The corners are kind of arched. And don't forget to take it around your edges. Okay. All right. So we're doing pretty well. We have our water, we have our sky, we have our mountains, we have our shaded corners. So the next part is going to be drawing in this pier. Now, before I do the pier, I want it to be totally dry. So I'm going to use my hairdryer. So go ahead and, if you have a hairdryer at home, go ahead and use yours as well. If not, just pause the video and let it dry a little bit before you go on. So you see, with a hairdryer, it dries really fast. It only takes like a minute or two for it to actually be cured. So something to keep in mind if you don't have a hairdryer. Maybe you go grab one. They have them at the thrift store. That's where I grab mine. So our next part is going to be the pier. So we're going to work on our pier here with our posts. And then we have some rocks and a little rock over here. So let's go ahead and get started with that. Now, I'm going to put a little piece of chalk in each of your packages. This is going to be your best friend. You can erase it. You can wipe it off and start over completely. Just be careful that you don't rub it. You just damp paper towel lightly while you're working on it right now. Just rub it with your fingers and it'll come up enough for you to be able to keep going. I would suggest wait a few days before you wipe it off at the very end. Okay, so don't, finish painting right now and then go to wipe your chalk off. You want to give it a few days to cure before you do this, just in case you accidentally smudge your paint. If you would rather just go ahead and do your paint instead of the chalk, you can go ahead and do that. It will definitely help you though if you try the chalk. So something to keep in mind. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing we need to do is draw a line down the middle. Now you might say, I'm not sure where the middle is. Well, you can measure it. You can use your thumb and your forefinger or your pinky and just kind of eyeball. I think it's around here. Actually, we got to move it over a little bit. So right there. All right. And I'm going to draw a line straight down. Straightish down. Okay. All right, and that's going to be the length of our pier. We want to have about 1.5 inches between the top of our pier, that means this part, and the bottom of our mountain. We need to have room for these poles, okay? So let's stop at about 1.5 inches from there. So mine's going to be right there. We're going to make this into a T. So your top of your T is only going to be about 1 inch wide. I don't expect you guys to take a ruler out, just eyeball it, okay? So about 1/2 inch on each side. All right. My throat is getting dry talking like this. Okay. So then it's going to be about 1.5 inches on each side of the line. So let's make a little dot to mark where about 1.5 inches would be. And then from the corner of this T, we're going to match it up down here on both sides. Again, if you feel like you make a mistake, you can wipe it off. You can just make a new line. Okay? Now, I'm going to leave that how it is, and we can go ahead and start using our paint next. So let's put the chalk down. If you want to keep going with your chalk until you feel comfortable, you go right ahead. But I am going to start by filling in this whole section gray, my dark gray. And I'm going to use my angled brush to do it so that I fill it up a little bit quicker than if I would use my detail brush, and it also is going to make it smoother. Don't wrap this under the bottom edge. That's the only side I'm not going to suggest to paint because, well, you could if you were at home and it was laying flat on the table. Since I'm working on an easel, it could stick to my easel and rip the canvas when I go to take it off, and that would be sad. We don't want to have a sad time here. We want to have a good time, all good experiences, right? So it's important to know these things. Okay. So the next part is going to be taking our detail brush. And with our black and our detail brush, so I might add a little bit more water to my, black to get it to go nice and smooth. I think I need a drink of water here. My throat is getting kind of dry. So sorry if I get a little hoarse here. We want to start putting lines horizontal or back and forth across here. They should be tighter or closer together at the top and get wider and wider as we come down to the bottom. There's no set number that I want you to make, so just make a few. The trick to using this brush, again, dipping it on an angle, twirling it as on the way out, and just using the tip of the brush. The harder you press with this brush, the wider your line is going to be. So just the tip, okay? Also adding a little water to your paint helps. Keep dipping. Don't expect to paint the entire canvas with one brush load. All right, and so once you have all of your lines in there, before we go on to putting our poles in, we want to add some highlights while the paint is still wet. So let's go ahead and grab that filbert brush. If your paint dries before you get to this point, that's okay. You can add a little more of that gray back in there before you add some white. I'm going to take my filbert brush, it's the one with the rounded top, with some white, and I'm going to just add white highlights, little white streaks right in the center, working my way out from the middle because I want them to be brightest in the middle. Okay, and then I can put that brush away. I'm going to take my detail brush back out again, and at this point we'll start putting our poles in around our dock. To do this, I'm going to add extra water to my black paint so that it moves nice and fluid. Even though these are flow acrylics, as they sit there, they dry up, the liquid evaporates, they get dry. Not as easily flowy. I need to grab a drink really quick. You guys go ahead and get caught up there. Okay. Sorry, my throat was getting really dry with all my talking. Okay. So let's start with the back and we'll work our way up. So the first one we want to put on is one in the center. If you want to use your chalk first, you go right ahead, but we're going to make three. We're going to put one in the middle and then one on each side. Now you're going to notice they're all going to stop. See how they all stop at this imaginary line. So keep that in mind. That is so that it makes it look like the ones in the front are bigger and the ones in the back are smaller, so that it helps with your perspective looking away in the distance. So I'm going to bring my line, so this is black on my detail brush, and I'm going to stop about an inch from the bottom of that black mountain. I'm going to put this line on each side. See, right there. And on the other side. And we want all the lines to match up with our invisible line at the top. Now, I'm going to skip and go every 2 planks, and then I'm going to put a line coming up from that part. So skip 2 planks and go up. Again, stopping at that invisible line. You can make them a little thicker and thicker and thicker as you come down. I'm going to do one on each side to match. Go jump back and forth. If you want to do all one side, flip it over and do all the other side. It might be a little easier, just a heads up. Just make sure that they touch that dock. We don't want them to look like they're floating. In fact, sometimes it's easier to flip your canvas over and do it upside down because you have gravity working for you. So maybe try that. You can draw them all in and then you can make them thicker later, or thicken them up as you go. If you make a mistake and you want to take something off, you just take a clean brush that's a little damp and just go right over top of the section as if you were painting that spot with a nice thin line, and it'll help you take off your paint. And we're just going to keep going, making them a little wider as we go along here. Again, stopping that invisible line. And fixing things up as you go along. You don't want to wait till the end if you have something to fix. You want to make sure you catch it while it's wet. Now, the very last one, make sure you widen it up away from the dock. What I mean by that is this. I'll show you here. I'm going to take my filbert brush and actually make the whole thing the width of my filbert. See how it's going outside, so it's not taking away from the space between these two poles. Okay, let's do them all on both sides. If you need to turn it to be more comfortable, turn your canvas as you go along. You'll notice that I turn mine a lot, so you can reach. Again, fix up any mistakes before we go on. not about making the perfect line the first time necessarily, as long as you know how to fix your mistakes. Okay, so we are getting close to being done here. We just have to do these rocks and that little rock in the water. So hang in there, and we're doing a great job. So let's take that filbert brush again. And at the beginning I mentioned stippling. Stippling is like a dabbing motion. We need to do that for this part. So you can take out all your frustrations of the week on your stippling. So let's take a little bit of our dark gray, and we're going to start dabbing, and it's going to be wider here, and it's going to taper off towards our dock. Okay, make sure you wrap it around the side of your canvas. If you want to add a couple right in here next to the dock, you can add maybe like a bigger one. I'm going to add like a bigger rock right in there. And do the same thing on the other side. So I'm going to add some rocks in here. And then they're going to get higher over towards the edge. And wrap around the side. Okay. Now let's go ahead and do the rock in the water. So I'm actually going to just put kind of like a blob shape, like a, not even a half circle, it's like less than a half circle, just like a curved line with a straight line underneath it. And then take my detail brush, just a little water, and pull, not adding extra paint. I didn't add extra paint. I'm just taking what's already there, straightening the bottom, and pulling out some of that paint to make it look like it is sitting in the water. Maybe shorten up part of that. Make it how you like it, okay? Now, when you're done with all of your stippling and you have your little rock, we have to add some definition so that we can see some of those rocks, at least. If you want to outline all the rocks, you go right ahead. I'm going to outline just some of my rocks for right now. So I want to add a little bit of a shadow around the top edge of that rock in the water. And I'm going to find a couple of big rocks here just to outline so it's not all the same shape and size. We want to add some variety. So add just a couple of big rocks, random shapes, not necessarily like an oval, right? They can be triangular, rectangular. Rocks are all different shapes. All right, and then I'm going to just start outlining some of these little circular pebble shapes. You can do all of them or just a few. I would definitely kind of do them around the edge here for sure. And then if you want to kind of taper off as you come down towards the bottom of your canvas, you can. So it's not like you're outlining every single rock. You can make squigglies, whatever you feel more comfortable with. You can just kind of be real loose with this part and give the impression of rocks, or really get in depth and draw every rock. Depends on your personality, what you like. I'm just going to do a little bit of each. Now when we are done with these outlines on these rocks, that is going to be our last step. So you're going to want to sign your name somewhere on your canvas. Usually I sign in the bottom right hand corner, and maybe you want to sign with the black to make it look like it's part of your rocks. That would be kind of cool. Make it kind of like a hidden gem kind of thing. They would have to figure out who did it. Cool. So I'm going to leave my rocks like that. And you can see my two examples. Here's another one. I don't like that one as much. I'm going to put that one away. But you can see my two examples here. Um, to see there's slight differences, but they're pretty close, right? So I'm sure yours is going to look awesome, and I can't wait to see it. So please send me a picture of your finished work. I am going to include this piece of paper with your package, as well as that little piece of chalk that I mentioned. It's going to be different than the normal package. This is going to be your step-by-step pictures. So if you're more of like a still picture visual person, this is going to help you out, I hope. So thank you guys so much for doing our Painting of the Month Club, and I hope you enjoyed July's painting, and I can't wait to see what you guys have to make, so, or have made. So thank you so much for watching, and hope to see you next time for August, and stay tuned to see what August Painting of the Month Club painting will be. If you have any suggestions, please send them to me at sarahjubeck@gmail.com. Thank you.